3-4 minutes.
because
अच्छा, ये दो आईडी आपका कैसे आ रहा है? We'll start in a minute.
Hi, good evening, Harshit.
Good evening, Mrs. Sarkar.
So finally, the time has come.
Correct. Mrs. Sharma, are we ready to start?
yes.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. Miss
Hi,
Sarkar,
good
how are
evening.
you?
I'm fine. How are you this evening?
Good, good.
Good.
So shall we begin with the permission
Yes,
of both?
please.
Okay. So namaskar, pranam, and a very good evening to the esteemed speakers and my dear learner attendees. Let me, on behalf of my entire team of Agore and Jobs in Education, welcome you all to the precisely curated first edition of the Knowledge Exchange, the EdTalk series. And with me, we have our two esteemed speakers and my great friends, Mrs. Rupkatha Sarkar and Mrs. Rachna Sharma. To begin with, let me recall my ICC times, and we had a wonderful novel by William Shakespeare known as You Like It. And I recall the quote which suddenly happened to come to me in the morning of Act 2, Scene 7, and which said, all the world's a stage and all men and women male players. They have their entrances and their exits. So after we enter this world, which is a stage, and before we exit, after having played the multiple roles which we get to play on the world stage, there's something which we all do, right? And what's that? That's living, right? And in order to live, there's something which we all should keep on doing ourselves, which is the topic of the day, known as the key and the most important word, be it for a professional or for non-professional, that's learning, right? So before we begin with the actual, with the wisdom which we get from our esteemed speakers, let me introduce you to our esteemed speakers. So beginning with Mrs. Rupkatha Sarkar, an educationist with 3 decades of experience in this sector, a great friend to me, of course. Mrs. Rupkatha Sarkar is the principal of La Martinia for Girls, Calcutta, which needs no introduction, and such a legacy school, which was established in the year 1836. A member of the Education Committee of Bengal Chamber of Commerce. She has been the recipient of Mother Teresa International Award for Education, Innovative Principal of the Year, and a teacher by heart. And to add on, there are several other accolades to Mrs. Sarkar account. She has been recognized by the British Council for incorporating international dimension in the school curriculum and mentoring other schools in the network, and also acting as an advisor to several institutes pan-India. A postgraduate from the University of Calcutta, Mrs. Sarkar believes that true nation building is possible through education of women and children. And I must quote a wonderful thing which I heard in one of her interviews, that is educating mind, educating heart, and through educating hand, right? So welcome, Mrs. Sarkar to our first initiative of TED Talk series. Thank you very much. Now, coming from the other part of the Indian territories, our concept was to bring educators from the extreme corners of pan-India, which of course in the coming series is going to be the 16 cardinal directions, brought to one platform through this tech and the digital world, having the pros and the benefits of disseminating knowledge, because the concept is changing from work from home to work from anywhere. So learning from school or institutes to learning from anywhere in the world. So now introducing you to another great speaker, Mrs. Rachna Sharma. As an Indian Air Force officer's wife, Mrs. Rachna Sharma holds more than 2 decades of experience in leading various CBSE, IB schools pan-India, and is currently the principal of Silver Oaks International School, Borumpet campus in Hyderabad. She holds Masters in Education along with MBA in Education Management, and has keen interest in science education, wherein upon her presentation upon the teaching and science education, she has received appreciation from the National Science Congress. She has been instrumental in developing, and I must say this is very unique, India's first summer program for gifted children in association with the National Institute of Advanced Studies. An avid reader and learner, she believes in keeping oneself professionally updated and leading out of the way. Of course, that with a proud thing we can say, and I always mention, we have experience in her company at IIM Ahmedabad. So welcome Rachna ma'am from Hyderabad and accepting our invitation for our first TED Talk series.
Thank you.
So having kept the topic after discussion and having a wonderful topic selection of learning for growth versus learning for exams, of course, entire world is somewhere around revolving around the word exam, all India ranks, toppers, this and that, which caters to 5% of the population. But what about educating the minds? What about educating the hearts? What about educating the real education or the Indian education ethos, which we as learners are really curious to know, right? So opening statement is invited by both the speakers one by one. And then we will be having some questions, which of course the attendee is going to post in, and individual question and answer session, because we want to have something productive, documented thing, which the learners from pan-India are awaiting to listen to the wisdom of 2 speakers. And I must also invite, there have been some attendees from abroad as well. So welcome all of you. And this is the power of tech to connect everything at one platform. So welcoming all the teachers, educators, students, and attendees from pan-India and abroad to our first TED Talk series. So I invite Mrs. Rachna Sharma to give her opening statement or her notion of the topic, learning for growth versus learning for exams. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Harshit, and thank you for that introduction also. So learning for growth versus learning for exams. So learning is for the students. So I will come from teaching because that's what we do. So the question is, why do we teach? Do we teach to complete syllabus? Do we teach for teaching for exams? Do the students know why do they learn? Is the purpose just passing exams year after year, getting marks, passing exams, and then getting a job? But whatever our case may be, we may be teaching for whatever reason, but what is the rhetoric that our students all the time are listening to? Are they all the time listening to this rhetoric that study, learn, do better, get good marks, and get a good job? If that's the rhetoric they're listening to all the time, why would they want to study? Why would they want to learn for the pleasure of learning, learn for growth? They would learn only for exams. So then where is the problem? Why is it that we are creating this kind of a notion? Why is it that we are making this entire thing as a vehicle, the process of learning as a vehicle to achieve an end? Aren't the means important? Isn't the learning important? Isn't it important that they learn for the pleasure of learning, for the growth of learning? Now, today, if I ask any one of us sitting here, anything, a book you pick up, you read, or anything that you do, it helps you to learn and to grow. Everything, every single day we do helps us learn and grow. Shouldn't that be the thought for the students also? Shouldn't they feel every morning when they come to school, they should not be coming there for finishing some lessons or finishing some chapters or giving some tests and giving some marks. They should be coming there for the pleasure of learning. They should be coming there for growing as individuals, as human beings. That is the kind of a change we need to bring into our classrooms. That is the kind of a pleasure we need to bring into our classrooms. My question is, are we doing it? If we are not, then why are we not doing it? Are we not telling them that learn only for exams? Are we actually telling them learn for your own growth? That's something I think each one of us, we need to ask. We need to question ourselves and figure out what is it that we are doing? What is it that we want? And what is it that we are telling them? What is the rhetoric that's coming out? So,
Yes, of course. That really made me, think when you're speaking of pleasure of learning, and as heads, and of course, with double the experience of my age, what I am at present, and there have been generations who have not read good work. And it's rightly said, a person who reads is the person who leads. But
yes.
unfortunately, there have been generations who have not get good work.
Yeah.
And one such famous, and what I really love is El Dorado series. And there's a famous quote which said that desire and curiosity are the eyes with which we see the world. When you're speaking of pleasure of learning, people are having desire to be this, be X, be Y, be Z. But where is that curiosity of learning? Why debit is called debit? Why credit is called credit? That rote learning, that spoon feeding, that curiosity. I say the land of the mind. It's something, there's no space for rumination. So, coming to Mrs. Sarkar now, like we would really want to know what are your thoughts in general for this topic, learning for growth versus learning for exams with your experiences and everything, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
I think, just when the results are out for ISC and CBSE and all the state boards, and we are discussing, learning for growth versus learning for exam, couldn't be a better time,
True.
So,
True.
I would say all of us, at some point of time have traveled by a train or maybe, to a countryside. And we get to see a pool. Okay. Sometimes we see the pond, which is overgrown with that water hyacinth. Okay. And then sometimes while we are traveling, we see a flowing stream.
True.
What is it that makes a difference between a stagnant pond and a flowing river? A stagnant pond becomes in no time a place for dumping garbage, while a flowing river is supporting life and civilization. So in life, learning is to be a flowing river, not to just learn for some marks and then get into the rut of life. And if we do that, then we can land up in a museum like the dinosaur. It forgot to learn from the changes that were happening around it. So as educationists, as influencers, if I may say, what is our objective for our students, for our people around us, whether we are in a workplace, a leader in a workplace, or a teacher, or a thought process leader? What is our role? Do we want to create dinosaurs, or do we want to create that insect who can change every minute? You give any kind of pesticide, it will again change, and there will be adaptability to the new environment. So I think my thoughts on being a learner for growth is, if we want to survive, as Charles Darwin said, survival of the fittest, then we have to learn. We cannot, exams are only a process to make us move ahead. So I think that is my thought.
Correct, of course. Very rightly said. When you're referring to the analogy of a dinosaur, I always say, are we creating intellectual monsters in the coming times? Or are we really creating smart thinkers? What is our aim? Being an intellectual monster or being an intellectual thinker? Because the future rests with those who can think properly, who can think rather smartly, and move ahead. So now I will, ask all the attendees. They're posting me up that whether they can ask questions. Of course, they can pose their questions in the Q&A box. And of course, with other questions, the question is going to be taken up. And at the last, we're going to keep a 2 minutes of open thing where the speaker is going to answer to the question shooted by the learner. So coming back to Mrs. Rachna. So Rachna ma'am, I always have one question, when we speak of this topic. So the question really goes that, where do you think this vehicle of learning should land to? That is number one. And with it, and how are we deviating from the actual destination? What should be the destination of this vehicle of learning? And are we really proceeding in the right vehicle or at the right destination? So what are your thoughts on it, ma'am?
Your topic itself gives the answer. The vehicle should be landing at growing, but the vehicle is right now deviating and landing at exams. Which is not the true destination. The learning should be for growing. The learning should be for, now when we talk of growing, what is it that we are talking of? We are talking of people developing their social skills, people developing their behavioral skills, people developing their personalities, their problem solving capabilities. And from becoming just consumers of the knowledge that is available, we should be contributors into that knowledge, into that pool of knowledge. True. If we are not grooming these young people to be contributors, then how is our pool of knowledge increasing? How do we know that things are different? Because, what we believe the world to be is what the world is right now. The world actually is something very else, very different. But then this is our knowledge. So because this is our knowledge, this is what we believe things to be. But we want them to be contributors, those contributors who can actually bring a change in the world. Yeah. So as Einstein had said, that education is what remains after one has forgotten what is learned in school. Now, that...
Ma'am, I guess the mute button is pressed. Yes, thank you.
So education is what remains after what we've forgotten what we've learned in school. I think that's something that we educators need to be thinking about. What are we doing the education for? Just some learning, just some rote learning of some physics, some chemistry, some math, some English, which again is not making sense. The same physics, chemistry, math can make a lot of sense if they understand that the acids and bases are not only in the laboratory. Those are those acids and bases in my stomach which create a havoc at times and can keep my head balanced at all other times. It is the same acids and bases which are making things happen around me. So it is not limited to a science lab, but it is there everywhere else. It is the same machine that is making things work, which I'm learning about in my Simple Machines chapter. So if that is brought out, if that is made, that sense is brought out to the child, then it makes so much more sense. You're not learning for learning an English lesson. You're learning English to be able to communicate your thoughts, English or whatever language.
True.
So if that is understood in that connotation, then it makes so much more sense. Then it is that is what your learning should be leading you to.
Correct.
Not for getting an 80, 90, 99, 99.6 or 99.8 percentage. That shouldn't be the aim. That's what we are going. Again, the question comes up is, what do we celebrate more? What do we as educators celebrate? I think collectively, we celebrate marks, but individually, we celebrate what our students have become. I or any educator sitting here would be happy with what her or his student has become.
True.
Collectively, as a school, as a country, as a city, as a state, we celebrate marks.
True.
I think we need to start bringing in a change with that.
Correct. Agreed. The three words which really strike my mind is a shift from being consumers of learning to becoming contributors towards learning. That's something. And we have a head from Mumbai who's just shooted a question, and she's wanting something to get insights from the teacher's perspective, right? So I've just rephrased the question, and this is for Mrs. Sarkar, that learning not just restricted towards students, but also towards growing oneself from the teacher's perspective. How do you really ensure or show us a path for being a lifelong learner, be it for any experience level teacher or so? Because it seems sometimes with the growing of the age, we become adamant to learning. So coming from the teacher's perspective, and I thank the head from Mumbai who's just posted the question and I rephrased it. So looking for your insights, Mrs. Sarkar.
Yes, a lifelong learner is not just a student, but a student teacher also. A student teacher, I say, a teacher has to be a student at heart. Unless he or she is a student at heart, will never be able to touch the mind or the soul of the student. So in that sense, a teacher who taught, I started my journey 30 years back as a teacher. Okay, I'm a dinosaur in terms of, if you can say in terms of the number of years that I have existed in this.
Lesser than my age.
So now, what I did 30 years back, will I do the same thing exactly today in my class? Or will I use my collective understanding and wisdom to reach out to the children who are now in this generation in my class? So as a teacher, my students can teach me much more than I can teach them. Am I aware of that? Am I ready to learn from others? That's number one. So it's a mindset. To ensure that a teacher is also a lifelong learner, I think we all need to have an open mindset, a mindset that allows me to take in new interests, to find out new possibilities of learning outcomes. So when I'm addressing my children now in class, suppose I'm teaching photosynthesis. So I teach biology. And the way I taught photosynthesis, say 20 years back, I cannot do that today. True. Yes, photosynthesis remains the same, but how I approach the topic, that is different. Today, children are traveling. They see so much more in the world outside. They perceive so much. Am I asking my children to find out or understand what they know about the ability of a plant? Do I find out whether they know what the outcome will be if there are no plants? They're already experiencing climatic changes. So have to be an evolving teacher. I have to use collective wisdom of my surroundings, my students, my other stakeholders in education, and all that I have, so that I can have or be an effective teacher. And most importantly, do I introspect? Do I do I teach children just to teach biology? Or do I teach them biology because I want them to affect life? Are we making them influencers?
True.
Shugato Mitro,
Mm.
Dr. Shugato Mitro. He's an erudite person. But what is it that he's doing at the end of the day that makes him famous? Touching lives of other children.
Correct.
What makes Malala Yousafzai a common household name with every child today? Or for that matter, Nobel laureate Kailash Satyarthi. They fought and stood by a cause. So if I today teach photosynthesis so that they can stand in their days to come for a cause that will help life, then I am an effective teacher.
True. True. Correct. When we have learned, I still remember my Hindi teacher, and she always used to say कि बेटा एक शिक्षक वो होता है जो बच्चों में पढ़ाई के प्रति प्यार जागरूक करते. Teacher is someone who makes the child love the subject. But the way teachers have been trained, the way they are practicing teaching, I always say teaching is not, some kind of a just a service. It's one of the most important professional services, along with the nobility which the word teaching carries. So with that, we have another question shooted from Musuri, and she is focusing on how do we grade marks? We focus on growth, but it's like at the end, what matters is marks. So, coming from IB school head, and I have rephrased the question that, and I also said that curiosity is something which is, of course, sheening away. But how to generate this curiosity back? Number one. So, how do you think the personalized learning concept can really be worked upon? And how, as an IB school head, do you really believe and implement this in your schools, ma'am? So, over to you, Rachna, ma'am.
Yeah, so curiosity, that was your question about curiosity. Now,
Correct.
curiosity is a very inherent human quality. It is a part of us. When we are young, when we are children, we are very, very curious because we are trying to understand the world. We are trying to understand the world around us and figure out what is right, what is this world around me. So we have a lot of curiosity. We try to ask a lot of questions. We try to figure out a lot of things. But gradually that curiosity dies. One, because we figure out certain things around us. Two, that curiosity is not encouraged so much. Not every time we get answers, not every time our curiosity is appreciated. So then the child starts feeling that, okay, maybe I shouldn't be asking so many questions. Maybe my parents don't have the time to answer my questions. My teachers do not have the time to answer my questions, because often he or she is normally hearing that keep your questions to yourself, later sometime I'll answer. Right now I'm busy, later sometime I will answer. So then the child doesn't get that freedom to be a very curious person. So then, is that what we are looking at? No, we want people to be curious. We want people to ask questions. We want people to be developed as thinkers. If we do not have thinkers who ask questions, then we stagnate. The world stagnates. And we in the schools need to be helping them become curious, because once a child is 20-year-old or 18-year-old, when he goes out of school, by then it doesn't make sense. They don't become curious at the age of 21 if that is not nurtured at a very young age. So that is where we need to be generating, or we need to be nurturing that curiosity in students. How do we do that? We allow questions to be asked. We encourage questions. We celebrate questions. We give them thoughts for asking questions. We give them opportunities for asking questions, and we give them answers to all their questions. Again, any teacher is not an encyclopedia who will be able to give all answers. But at least give them opportunities to be able to find out the answer. You do not have to give them the true answer, because then again, one question, one answer, end of story. One question, one opportunity to find out that answer opens doors to some other questions. And that's how learning happens, because that's how sticking of learning also happens, because that answer has come as an answer to a question that you have in your mind.
True.
Then it sticks. If it is just random learning that is coming to your mind, it doesn't stick because it has got no glue to hold on to. And that's how learning happens. No, that's how our brain works.
Correct.
So it is important that we develop curiosity, that is important that we allow them to ask questions. But most often what we are doing is we are institutionalizing learning. We are saying, this is what the book is saying, this is what you need to learn. Yeah, we are regimenting learning, but learning can't be regimented. Again, I'm not saying we are wrong. I think it's the entire system that makes us do that. But then I think instead of just waiting for somebody at top to tell us change it, I think we can make small changes within our context, within our capability. As she said, we are leaders in our classrooms. We can make a change there. And I, as a teacher, each one person who's a teacher affects so many lives, so many classes. So many. If Rupkatha has taught for 30 years, imagine the number of students' lives she's touched. And if she's made a change in her teaching, imagine the number of students she's touched and amount of change she's brought into the world. Small change, big effect.
Agreed. So yes, the concept which comes up is, if I may, joining two words is learning together. As Rupkatha ma'am and Rachna ma'am said, that it's not about individual learning, but an institution. It's a learning space, of course. In the learning space, wherein the both ways, or the deliverable and the listener are learning from each other. So we can say that, of course, it's learning together, the concept which is coming up. Yes, of course, there is a teacher from Surat. She is writing, can we ask questions? Of course, all the attendees are most welcome to write in the questions, so that we will be taking it at the end, right? So now something speaking on the real life learning and not just the academic portion. So I have a common question for both the speakers, right? Of course, with your past journey of so many years, of course, I'm very less than the age of experience you're having. So what have you seen in the past? What are you seeing at present? And what you really visualize the Indian system of education to be? As educationists, or as the scientists in the field of education, wherein you're not leading 2,000 or 3,000 children, as rightly said by Mrs. Sarkar and Mrs. Sharma, that you're leading the brain. As the heads, people look up to you because you set the standard and the benchmark wherein the direction of the thought process of that brain is gonna go. From the teachers to the students, and of course from the students to the parents. It's a complete cycle of learning, of which you guys are the center of learning dissemination, right? So from the past to the present and to the future, what exactly have you went through your learning journey, through your teaching journey as a teacher, and then through the various administrative positions, and ultimately as heads, of course, you're leading to? So beginning with Rupkatha ma'am.
It's very difficult to sum up so much in a short time. So I will just keep it very simple. If I'm today in the work that I'm doing, it's because of the influence of my teachers. It's because of the love and the guidance that I received from my family. And if I'm always looking forward to evolving and changing and learning new things, it's because of my teachers. And I'll add here my family again. Now it's more than parents, it's my child. He's a big fellow now, but I learned so much from him. And when I speak to him, I understand that if I have to touch the heart of a young person, then I need to change my thought process. I have to change many stereotyped notions that I have. And I think, the reason that, the vision that, we have, India is a country of gurus, okay?
True.
Our system of study is from our gurus. We sat at the feet of our gurus. They were not just teaching some maths or science, or for that matter, any liberal arts curriculum. They were under a tree out in the open. Imagine what nature was teaching, and through the guru, through the life of the guru, what the children were learning. Time evolved, time passed, system of living changed, society structure changed, and it had become more consumerist. Okay, the approach has become very consumerist. And, if you talk to any teacher, she will say, or he will say, oh, those were the days when children were so respectful, and, and today, they are so transactional. Present system, I think we have stopped to breed our children to be not just our students, breed them, nurture them to be our children in the classroom. Do I have that love for that very naughty child who continues to drive me to my wit's end? Do I have love for that child, empathy for that child? Even today, after many years, when that child, after being reprimanded, will come back and tell me in a wedding ceremony, in a shadi badi, ma'am, you remember me? I said, yes, I think, yes, I know your face. I don't want to, make her feel sad. Yes, she's grown up, young lady. She said, do you remember you scolded me and you sent me at the back of the line? See, today I don't cross lines. I'm standing at the back so that my turn comes. Understand, a child comes to me a week back and she brings me a packet of eclairs. She's a dentist now. She comes and gives me a packet of eclairs and said, ma'am, every time I used to come to your office, you would give me eclairs. Today, let me give you a packet of eclairs. The tables have turned. No matter whether we sit under the tree or in an AC room, heart has not changed.
True.
The feeling should not change. If I treat my student as my own child, there is no problem. There is no looking back. The child will reciprocate even today. And I think all teachers will agree with me on that. What do I see for myself or for the country ahead in terms of education? It's a great evolving area. If this area is kept in order, the life of a nation will see a big change. There is technology now. So a teacher has to be technologically enabled. She should be knowing the new ways of teaching learning process. So reskilling, upskilling has to be there. So in a new age situation, education is an evolving system. Professions are changing. Today, what professions we have, tomorrow there's be something else. So as an educationist, we have to build an entrepreneurial mindset in our children. Let them be job givers than job seekers. Even if they're working in a set environment, what is the new thing? What are they going to create new? Are they going to be, content creators, knowledge creators? So this is what India is moving to, and it is doing very well. It is doing very well with a population which is booming, thriving, and especially the younger generation. I think we need this entrepreneurial mindset in the teacher and in the child to take the risk of trying something new, to learn something new. And the world is a stage, as you said, Harshit. The world is a stage. Today, I sit in my room and I can get the best teachers from all over the world through technology. I can listen to the best brains in business in the world. Let us open our classrooms. Let us open the hearts and minds and souls of our children, telling them that they will not be educational monsters, but they will be educational hearts of gold, okay, where they will influence the life of another person. If I cannot influence the life of my children, and they in turn will be leaders in the days ahead, they will sit in positions of power. When they frame policies, will they look for the marginalized? Will they look for the downtrodden? Will their policies support those who are being underprivileged, who are being marginalized every day? Are they going to be such leaders? Then our system, education system, is moving in the right direction. When we teach, we have to teach the child for life, not for the exam that is coming.
Agreed. Agreed. Yes, very rightly said. With the entrepreneurial mindset, so I always believe in one thing. It really does not matter what we know, but what matters is how well can we enterprise what we really know. That's what the need of the hour, and that's what the future going to vest on, not just the learner side, but from the educator side as well, because they are the actual ones to seed or to sow the seed of the curiosity or the thinking or the future child. Because I believe a child spends 13 plus years in a school setup, K-12 setup. Higher education is just polishing the child. But the real growth and the development of the child happens in a school. And that's the best place for research, wherein you get age group of 2 plus to 60 plus. So where is the diversity going to centralize to? That's a school. So of course, now coming to Rachna ma'am, your thoughts on, with your experience, of course, with the international or the IB board as well. What have you seen? What are you seeing? And how do you visualize as an education scientist for the coming decades for the India, for the Bharat to evolve to? As Rupkatha ma'am said, the Guru Shishya Parampara, somewhere it's getting sheened away, wherein we used to touch. And I must say that recent Prime Minister's visit to one of the foreign countries and the abroad Prime Minister touching the feet of the Indian Prime Minister, that shows what Indian ethos we as Indians have. So what are your comments on this, ma'am?
So, we often say this, that the destiny of a country begins in its classrooms. We are the architects of that destiny. We, the educators, are the architects of that destiny. What we want our country's future to be is what we make in our classrooms. As you rightly said, 16 years the child is in our classrooms, 8 hours a day. The child is awake for what, 10 to 12 hours? Out of that, he or she spends so much of time with us. So we definitely are the architects of that destiny. What is the destiny that we want to create? I think that's a dialogue that we educators need to have. We need to understand what is the destiny that we want to create. I actually don't know if we ever think about that, if we ever really do that, or we just go on and on teaching as per what is prescribed. Are we actually teaching for the mind, or we are teaching for the heart? Are we making them good human beings? Because that's what, as she said, that's the need of the hour. You can be a great scientist, but if you're a not good human being, then you'll be making bombs which kill people. You can be a great doctor, you can be a great engineer, but most importantly, you have to be a good human being. But where does our learning system cater for that? It doesn't cater for it. It has got all subjects, but it doesn't cater for making one a good human being. And if we are tightly capping everything and saying this period after that period after that period, where's the time? And if we don't do it, how can we leave it to the society, to the parents? The world is changing. The society doesn't give that much. So if we are saying that the Guru Shishya Parampara is not really alive now, because the world around is changing and touching feet is not considered to be so cool. It's not considered to be so cool. Okay, don't touch feet, but have that respect. students do have that respect. As she said, they do have that respect. And the ones who are naughty are the ones, because they get scolded the most. They get summoned to your office the most. So they love you the most. They come back, they are the ones who come back most often to us. And then they tell us stories as to how things changed. So the minds which we are impacting are those minds which can actually be impacted so much. And we have the capacity and the capability to be able to do that. Talking about the future, research says that 35% of the skill set which is required in the next 10 years, after a decade, is very different from the skill set that we are teaching right now. So the future that we are leading them to, the future that the world that we are preparing them for, we have no idea about it. So what are we preparing them for? Which world are we preparing them for? Then the kind of skill set that is more required is being a good human being. The kind of skill set that is required is having the grit, having a growth mindset, having problem-solving capabilities. But our subjects don't teach that. So then we have to devise a way by which we can build all this, we can teach all this, and then make them future ready, because when we teach them and they go out in the world, there is a gap from what we teach to what they take out and what is required by the world. I think somewhere down the line, we need to be bridging. NEP 2020 is working towards it. It's working towards it. But ours is a vast nation. For it to come down to that small village in Bihar, to a city in Delhi, to some Mumbai, to some part in Kashmir, for it to be translated like that is not an easy task. But then if we all take it up and if we all do it, I think we will be able to bring in a change. So there are systemic changes that are coming up. They are coming up, but that system, for it to affect the entire, it's a huge place to be, for it to come down to. I think that top-down approach is happening. If the bottom-up approach also starts happening, somewhere we will meet. And we will be able to bridge that gap, and we need to do that fast. Because the world is changing at a phenomenally fast pace. If we are not making curious people, then we are not making them think. If we are not making them think, then we are not making them people who come up with innovations, with ideas, who become entrepreneurs. So it's all a chain. And we need to be working at it from the grassroots.
Correct. Agreed. That bridging, as higher education, we say the industry-academia relationship, the industry has to be bridged with the college, university. But I also think there needs to be a bridge between the higher education and the senior secondary education, because there's a drastic change. Change is also changing at a breakneck speed. That's what the speed of change is all about. And to Rupkatha ma'am, there's a question coming up, which it's very interesting on quantifying something coming from a science background. That in today's world, where scientists are near about finding solutions for each and everything, ChatGPT coming to picture, solving GMAT question paper through ChatGPT, this and that, and solving the toughest of the entrance exams in the world, can we really quantify learning? Is there any formula which you can think on, leaving a spark in the mind? Can there be anything, any mechanism or formula, or in short, can we quantify learning?
This has a very wide scope of answering. Okay. If you want to make it slightly narrow, then you can say, yes, we can do some kinds of assessments to find out what the learning outcome has been. And in educational institutions, we do some kind of assessments. Okay.
Correct. Correct.
But if you see at a very wider aspect, how can you quantify? Quantify may not be, but at least you can see the application of learning by what the child or the person is doing later on in life. Okay, how has the person evolved to be? What is the person doing in his or her life? Maybe that we can quantify to say, all right, this is what the learning outcome has been. All types of assessments are available. We are doing summative, formative, and all of those terms that we use. But yes, one thing is for sure. we need to do more of formative assessments. Understand in small chunks what is the child learning. How is the daily progress of the child? After all, drops make the bigger water body. So why not go for more formative assessments and make our assessments more analytical, not the assessment of the rote learning process, but assessment of the analytical skills of the child. Even as Ma'am Rachna has just said that, NEP is gearing towards it and it is moving towards it. And there has been a paradigm shift. I can talk about my exam body. It has made a paradigm shift. So now we are already moving from that rote learning system. There will be questions from the topic, but it won't be, you will have to
Direct.
address the question from the understanding of the topic. You have to apply your knowledge. So this paradigm shift, conceptual knowledge gaining, has already now started. So now I think the learning outcomes will be achieved. The ideal learning outcomes will be achieved. Chat GPT you were talking about, fabulous platform. Let students and teachers both take advantage of it. Teachers can develop fabulous lesson plans from Chat GPT. Okay. Children can learn good ways of learning, writing things, researching and, but there is a limitation. You cannot use Chat GPT for everything. It is not a one time, like a password you give and everything will come out. No. So I was talking to my son who's a lawyer. I said, how much of Chat GPT can you now use? He's doing an LLM course. Okay. I said, how much of Chat GPT can you use? He said, Ma, yes, I tried using it because for the thesis and the research papers that he has to write, it is so sketchy. Unless and until you really know the policy and you can apply it with your own knowledge and understanding, your Chat GPT will not work. Okay, so there are limitations. And coming yesterday, we had gone for a session with the Oberoi Grand people. This particular group of hotels are now coming up with their own 3-year course, their set step course. The entire resource person, when she spoke about, 3 things came out. One was ethical standard. If you have to be successful, as Rachna said, ethical and moral standards have to be in place.
Correct.
So whether you want to become just the steward or whether you want to become the GM, there are stages, they're growing, but the ethical, moral values are very, very important. If we can instill that in our children, anywhere they go, they will do well. And how do we do that? Every teacher, we have this, every school has moral science. What do we do sometimes? We have moral science books where you read a story and then you answer questions. My goodness. Okay. So moral science, it is the way of living life. So every teacher is a moral science teacher, from the maths teacher to the art teacher, is a counselor, is a mentor, is a moral science teacher. The day we understand that, then every lesson is a moral science teaching lesson. When I teach childbirth in my biology class, it is my duty to tell my children what parents are doing for this child from the time of giving birth to the time that, the child is being brought up, from inside the womb to outside. That is the life skill moral science a teacher has to give in every class, no matter what the curriculum is, what the syllabus is. Teacher has to teach ethical standards to the child. The second thing that I realized from her talk was we have to make our children physically fit. 9 hours, 8 to 9 hours, the person has to stand, whether GM or whether the supervisor. Here in we are making children into, like little dollops of ice cream. They melt. They can't stand for 10 minutes in a hall. Okay. They don't take their breakfast and come to school. They collapse. So as parents and as teachers, we have to make them physically fit and mentally strong, emotionally strong, to take failures, to take stress, to take challenge of life. If we can do these three things, make them morally strong, physically strong, and emotionally strong, we have done our duty as a teacher, no matter what subject we teach.
Very nice. True. That's what the holistic growth and the holistic thing when we speak. And I believe in the younger generation or the younger teachers, the teachers to be, or the fresher or the raw teachers and the experienced teachers, what through your Mrs. Sarkar, the equation which we can form is younger ideas plus seniors experience is equal to holistic development. Don't you think that's going to be the future of education?
Fabulous. Very well put.
Yes. Yes.
I just want to add in a little, Harshit.
Yes, Rachna.
Like, integrity is something that we wish to teach our children. Integrity is something that we feel, as she said, morally to be strong. How do you teach that? How do you teach that? Because that's something which is lacking. What we do is we have exams, because I was going through the question, somebody said it's nice to talk all this, but how do you do it? So, when we have exams, we have without invigilators exams. So Harshit is writing an exam. He's writing an exam for himself. If he wants to cheat, go ahead. The purpose of your exam is not to get more marks than somebody, or your purpose of your exam is to know what you know and know what you don't know. If that is understood well, then learning for exams is also okay, because then you're trying to understand what you know and what you don't know. Yeah. But if you do this kind of an experiment in the schools and see how much of trust you can build in the children, that trust carries on from here as you grow up. They know that they can be dependable people. They can be people who do not have to be watched on at all points in time. Aren't we doing that in our schools, watching our teachers, how they are performing, watching what they're doing in the classrooms? If you eradicate all that and you build in trust, I think so much more. Yeah, that's an ocean, I think.
Yes, of course, correct. A lot of things are there to come on, and we have many questions, on the play, but I'll be, pick choosing because of the shortage of time we had. There's Abhishek, and there's one more teacher from UT who has written something, common question. And before that, I was just seeing a circular from CIST a few days back that this time, for the first time, I guess, an improvement exam has been introduced, apart from the compartment exam, right? And the question with Mr. Abhishek, what has asked is, there are a lot of children who are dropping out from schools or colleges and go on to become successful entrepreneurs. My question to the honorable speakers are, how would you tap these failing students or these dropout students who are not interested much in academics, but you have to nurture great talents from them? So it's an open question. Any of the, either Rachna ma'am or Rupkatha ma'am want to take this question and answer that for the dropout students who are not passing, maybe 3 or 4% of students in total, how do you show them an alternative path who are not coping up with academics? Maybe they are focusing on something else. So,
for anybody to be able to learn, sorry, I didn't even ask, I just started off.
No, go ahead, Rachna, go ahead.
For anybody to be able to learn, there has to be an interest. The reason why a child is not learning, I think, is a lack of interest. So what if we start making him learn something which is of his interest, and then taking him from there to something which is also required? But the building up of that self-esteem in that child, building up of that feeling that I can do something. I think once that is developed, there are multiple ways by which you can do that. Once that is developed, once the child starts feeling that I am capable of something, and then you take them to learning of some other things which you want them to learn, which is again not necessary.
True.
If a child doesn't want to really learn, school teaches basics of everything, which actually should be used in life. If you understand electricity in school, you know how to fix the fuse later in life.
True.
Right. All these are very, very basic things which are required by everybody, and that's why everything is taught. So if a child is not learning one way, that's what is the teacher there for, teaching in different other ways by which the child can learn. And that's where, otherwise, if we just have to deliver the content from the book to the classes, they don't need us now. There are 100 other ways they can find out. But our capacity comes in only when we are able to bring each child to the table. We bring each one of them, make each one of them learn in their way. Individualized learning comes in there.
Correct.
Not learn the way I want to teach, but I will get down to the way you want to learn and be able to teach that. And it is not difficult. It is not difficult. In a class of 30, 35, it is possible. Because a chunk of students will learn in a particular way. It's only a handful which need that guidance. How about using peer learning? How about using different other ways to be able to bring that to the child? So there are ways, I think it's a teacher who shouldn't give up.
Great.
Then you can. It is possible.
I think, the system of assessment, I think here we will have to be very careful. There are students who have different, as we all know, different learning styles and different interests. So why is it that all of us have to study, say, history?
True.
All of us have to study maths. Now that's one question, huh? But what if I don't know a little bit of maths? How will I do later on if I'm doing a business? How will I do my calculations? Now you may say the tea stall, the roadside tea stall owner did not go to school to learn maths, but it's functional maths. So that means, are we teaching our children functional operations in various areas? And then take the child to the area where he or she wants to be in later on. 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old may not know what he or she will become later. Because today, if I'm an engineer, tomorrow I can be an author. People have changed their professions. So what we are doing, as Rachna rightly said, we're giving them a basis, a foundation in school. So if I don't get a pass mark in a particular subject, I'm not a failure. I'm just showing, it's an indication that I'm not much interested in that subject, or I have not been able to learn what is required of me. So then teacher or the system has to find better ways of teaching or facilitating learning and then assessing the child. So assessment pattern has to change. There are many options now in terms of subjects schools are offering. So children can take up different areas. Interest, curiosity, garnering, all that is happening through another system, what we are now going to do. We've done it before, but it has come in a more structured manner as bagless days,
Yes.
Okay, take them out, find out what the different vocations are, what the different trades are. And maybe, you one day will not be a weaver, but you might be helping the weavers. Okay. We all know about Shamlu, Mrs. Shamlu Dudeja, who has done a phenomenal work in, promoting Kantha work and the people whom she works with. So many women. So we have different kinds of interest. So let us move with the child's interest and find better ways of assessing the child.
Great. Very well said, by Rupkatha ma'am and Rachna ma'am, that at the end, it's all about the journey of being together. How we move together, the teacher and the student, acting as learners parallelly to each other. that should be the shift in the psychology and the approach. So yes, thank you very much for a wonderful wisdom sharing session. And I assure you to all the attendees that every month we're going to have one such series with great speakers coming up, sharing their real life experiences. And that's what the task of Jobs in Education and Agore has taken up to be, because we don't want to substitute institutions. That's what the idea, the theme of Agore is all about. And as Rupkatha ma'am said, that sitting in her principal's office, she can recruit teachers from the world. And that's what the idea of Jobs in Education is all about. So thank you very much to all the attendees, and thank you to the speakers for being our first speakers for our first ED Talk session and believing in the thought process and the ideology. And yes, the young and the senior combination, the holistic growth is represented by this webinar, wherein we are connecting with the world. We have some attendees from Dubai and from Singapore as well. So thank you for that. And I just want to quickly end with a small note that we are living in a world of immense transformation. Let us not remain mere spectators, sheltered and cocooned. Rise and help in shaping change, and be an active member in transforming this beautiful land into one where all of us can prosper. Discover your calling, ladies and gentlemen. So let us, as teachers, as students, as learners, as parents, or as humans, seed in the seed of curiosity within our minds, give it a space for rumination, and let us all grow together. So thank you very much once again to Rupkatha ma'am and Rachna ma'am. Thank you, and thank you to all the attendees for being the part of the Knowledge Exchange, the first ED Talk series by Jobs in Education and Agore. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.